Hey everybody, Wolf Lord Rho here. So today we continue our look at which Primarch would Roboute Guilliman choose to return. Now this is part 2, so if you missed the previous upload, be sure to go back and check that one out first before continuing. General spoiler warning before I begin, I may mention general events from the current 40k timeline and Horus Heresy, so just be warned. Now, as we stated in the previous upload, we're taking a look at who Roboute would want or prefer to return, not necessarily who Roboute and the Imperium might need to return. That one we'll compare after. And as always, this is just my opinion. There's no harm in disagreeing with me. That's the great thing about talking about the lore. We all have different opinions. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. So in our previous conversation, we had Jaghatai Khan at number 6, Lion L. Johnson at number 5, and Leman Russ at number 4. So let's continue with the top 3. Number 3, Corax. Now, as is unfortunately the case with most Primarchs, we aren't blessed with a ton of information regarding their relationships. But from what we have been given, we have enough to say that Corax and Guilliman had a good relationship. When Guilliman reflected on the news of the Istvan massacre, he mourned the loss of all 3 of his believed fallen brothers, Corax, Vulcan and Ferrus. So he clearly thought favourably of all 3. And indeed, we see that in Corax's Primarch novel, where we have the two going against each other in training exercises. Despite Guilliman being the overall victor over Corax, he clearly makes a point of speaking favourably to him, and regretting that they have to part company. The friendship between the two brothers being clearly evident, despite the differences in their personalities. And of course, Corax was one of the Primarchs who sided with Guilliman, suggesting the breaking down of the legions, believing in his brother's plan to be the best course of action. So we can definitely infer there's a clear trust between the two. And unlike the willfulness of Jaghatai, the stubbornness of the Lion, or the temper of Russ, Guilliman would have more trust in Corax to perform in the role he desired for him. He'd have less ego to contend with. Now, of course, at this point, we don't know how Black Library is going to deal with Corax before he leaves for the Eye of Terror. So I'm choosing to believe they won't go overboard with the depression aspect that many people have labelled Corax with and turn him into some kind of non-functioning wreck. I think it's a very intriguing story as long as it's done right. And keep in mind, Guilliman has no idea Corax has since embraced his warp powers within the Eye of Terror. He wouldn't find that out until Corax is back. But with all that in mind, I believe Corax is a solid fit at number 3. Now this is where it got really difficult for me, and I could easily believe Roboute would have Eva as his number 1 preference. And I'll probably have changed my mind again by the time the video goes live. But at number 2, Vulcan. Vulcan, king of the hugs. You just know deep down old Roboute just wants a big old hug from his bro to make him feel better. I mean, even Dawn enjoyed a good Vulcan hug. No, okay, on a serious note, I do believe the humanity of Vulcan is a big reason Guilliman would like to have him around. Firstly, from a personal aspect, as I mentioned in the previous upload, the Guilliman who has returned to the 40k universe is a very tortured soul. He has returned to an Imperium he barely recognises, an Imperium that has fallen a long way from the golden age of the Great Crusade. It's taken a very big toll on him. What more do you want from me? I gave everything I had to you, to them. Look what they've made of our dream. This bloated, rotting carcass of an empire is driven not by reason and hope, but by fear, hate and ignorance. Better that we had all burned in the fires of Horus's ambition than lived to see this. He travelled the length of the galaxy to seek counsel and comfort from his father, only to be met with passionless orders. On a side note, I'd really love to see how the Emperor reacts to other Primarch returns. because there were certainly others he had much more close relationship with than Roboute, and Vulcan was definitely one of those. We've been blessed with more Vulcan and Emperor time than virtually even Horus. Has the Emperor truly been stripped of all his humanity? But back to Roboute, he has spent over a century now yearning for a brother to confide in. And save possibly Sanguinius, there is no Primarch that will be as understanding and comforting as Vulcan. Despite being a wrecking machine of a warrior who could flip over land raiders with bare hands, Vulcan is a gentle soul, believing himself a blacksmith rather than a warlord. He believes in the brotherhood of family with his brothers. Vulcan would definitely be a reassuring presence for his brother. And if we are to look more practically, Vulcan would be no threat to Roboute's position as Lord Commander, because he wouldn't want it. Vulcan's all about defending the people of the Imperium, and as such would be much more willing to follow Guilliman's plans, especially as Guilliman is trying to restore the value of human life to an uncaring Imperium, one that's used to sacrificing whole planets at the drop of a hat. And it's for these reasons I'm confident Guilliman would want to see Vulcan's return. But in the end, for number one, I went for Rogal Dorn, the Praetorian of Terra himself. Now this has a big asterisk, because we don't yet know how much Guilliman and Dorn's relationship is going to change in the Scouring, with Dorn's strong disagreement of the breaking down of the legions. But the return of Rogal would represent the best of both worlds in Roboute's eyes, in my opinion. Firstly, a brother he can have absolute trust in, no matter the circumstance, and vice versa. I mean, literally, there should be a drinking game for every time Dorn mentions Guilliman's coming to Terra. He has absolute faith in Roboute, that he is coming and they just have to hold out for time against Horus. And when discussing Primarch's loyalty, he has no doubt Guilliman remains loyal. I will not believe it of Roboute. And who more so than the Praetorian of Terra would Roboute have faith in? No matter what the Imperium would face, he would know Dorn stands against it and stands behind him. Dorn knows Guilliman is the best choice for Lord of the Imperium. Indeed, he's hinted at it before. You quote my own brother at me? Dorn narrowed his gaze. Roboute is not here, Oblivion Knight. Would that he were. In his absence, I am Lord Commander of the Imperium. This gives Guilliman a sense of confidence not quite matched by his other brothers. Jagatai, the Lion and Russ have too much risk on going by their own actions. And Corax and Vulcan, despite also having a good relationship with Guilliman, aren't quite as valuable an asset tactically as Rogal Dorn. And that's no insult to Corax, who's a top tier Primarch warrior. It's just Dorn is amongst the best Primarch commanders. And I think it's important to not overlook the emotional aspect of Dorn. Yes, he's amongst the most reserved of the Primarchs, but he's not emotionless. One of the best emotional scenes we've seen between the Primarchs was Dorn's reunion with Vulcan, expressing his joy at seeing Vulcan again, and Vulcan feeling his brother's emotion returned in their embrace, albeit in his own awkward manner. Vulcan embraced him firmly anyway, and felt his affection for his brother returned, albeit awkwardly. For me, this combination of characteristics leads me to think Guilliman would want Dorn's return the most. But I have to say, it was a very hard choice, particularly between him and Vulcan, with Guilliman's practicality and logical thinking giving Dorn the edge. And of course, we have eliminated the deceased Ferrus and Sanguinius. Otherwise, these rankings would be very, very different. Guilliman thought highly of both of those brothers. But of course, this is just my opinion. What do you guys think? As always, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love to read them. But that's it for today, guys. As always, a huge thank you to all my subscribers. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.